Have you ever trusted someone so completely that when they betrayed you, it felt like the ground had opened up beneath your feet? I stood in my daughter's living room that Tuesday morning, staring at my empty jewelry box in Trent's hands, and I felt exactly that way. My legs went weak. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst right through my chest. "You'll never wear them again anyway," he said with a cruel smile, stuffing the velvet box into a donation bin. "I found a buyer before you could change your mind, Hazel. Consider it done." His voice was cold, like he was discussing throwing out old newspapers, not my entire history. The jewels weren't just gold and stones. They were my mother's wedding ring, my grandmother's pearl necklace, the bracelet Henry gave me on our 20th anniversary. They were 50 years of memories, wrapped in precious metal and locked away in my heart. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments section where you're listening to my revenge story from. I want to know how far it has reached. I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but no words came out. I looked at Trent, really looked at him, and saw a stranger standing in my daughter's home. This was the man Ruth had married 3 years ago, the man who called me Mom at Thanksgiving, who fixed my porch railing last summer. Now he stood there holding everything I had left of the women who came before me. "Where are they?" I finally whispered. My voice sounded small and broken, even to my own ears. Trent rolled his eyes like I was a child asking a stupid question. "Sold them yesterday to a dealer downtown. Got a fair price too, more than you'd know what to do with." He pulled out his phone and showed me a bank transfer. $7,000. My grandmother's heirloom necklace alone was worth twice that. I felt sick. "You had no right," I said, my voice shaking now with something more than shock. It was the beginning of anger, small and hot, burning in my chest. I turned to Ruth, my only daughter, my baby girl who I had raised alone after Henry died. She was standing by the kitchen doorway, wringing her hands, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Ruth," I said, begging her to look at me, to tell me this was some terrible mistake. She finally raised her head, and what I saw there broke my heart into a million pieces. Guilt, shame, but also acceptance. "Mom," she said softly, "Trent thinks it's what's best for everyone right now. We need the money, and you weren't wearing them anymore anyway." Her words hit me harder than Trent's cruelty. This was my daughter, the girl I had worked 2 jobs to put through college, speaking to me like I was senile. Like my feelings didn't matter. Like my history could just be erased for $7,000. I couldn't breathe. The room spun around me. It wasn't about the gold or the diamonds. It was about trust, about family, about everything I thought we were. And in that moment, I realized I had lost more than my jewels. My name is Hazel Marin, and I'm 72 years old. I was born and raised in Cedar Grove, a small town where everyone knows everyone, and your word means something. I married Henry Marin when I was 21, and we spent 43 beautiful years together before cancer took him 5 years ago. Henry and I ran the Marin hardware store on Main Street for 30 years. It was a good life, simple but full of love and purpose. The jewelry Trent sold wasn't just expensive. It was my inheritance, passed down through 3 generations of strong women who worked hard and loved deeply. My mother gave me her wedding ring before she died, making me promise to pass it to Ruth someday. My grandmother's pearl necklace survived the Depression because she refused to sell it, even when they had nothing to eat. And Henry's bracelet, oh God, that bracelet. He saved for 6 months to buy it, presenting it to me on our anniversary with tears in his eyes. I stood there in Ruth's living room, my hands shaking, my mind racing. Trent was lecturing me now about modern practicality and letting go of the past. He spoke like I was a hoarder clinging to worthless junk, not a woman mourning the theft of her history. Ruth just stood there, silent, letting him talk. That silence hurt more than anything he said. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to grab that donation bin and search every pawn shop in the state until I found my mother's ring. But instead, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I took a deep breath, straightened my back, and looked Trent directly in his smug face. I understand, I said quietly. My voice was steady now, calm. Trent looked surprised, like he expected me to fall apart. Ruth looked relieved. But inside me, something had shifted. Something had clicked into place like a lock turning. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I was going to fight. When I got home that afternoon, I didn't call anyone. I didn't break down. I walked straight to my bedroom, pulled out the old leather journal Henry had given me years ago, and I started writing. I wrote down everything. The date, the time, what Trent said, what Ruth said, how much money he claimed he got. I wrote down the names of every piece of jewelry I could remember. My mother's gold wedding band with the tiny inscription inside. My grandmother's 3-strand pearl necklace with the diamond clasp. The ruby earrings Ruth had worn at her own wedding. Henry's anniversary bracelet with our initials engraved on the back. I wrote for 2 hours, my hand cramping, my eyes burning. But with every word, my grief was transforming into something else. Strategy. Purpose. Determination. I had spent my whole life being kind, being understanding, being the peacemaker. Where had that gotten me? Robbed by my own son-in-law while my daughter watched. No more. I was done being the victim. 3 days later, I received a thick envelope in the mail. Property tax notice for the old Marin hardware store building. Henry and I had closed the shop 8 years ago when his health got bad, but we never sold the property. It sat empty on Main Street, gathering dust, worth almost nothing in today's market. Or so everyone thought. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at that tax bill, and something occurred to me. The building was still in my name. Solely my name. Henry had insisted on that years ago when we restructured our business for tax purposes. It was my property, my asset, my potential independence. I picked up the phone and called Arthur Bennett. Arthur had been Henry's accountant and our friend for 40 years. He was 75 now, retired but sharp as ever. Arthur, I said when he answered, I need your help with something. Something important. There was a pause, then his warm, familiar voice. Hazel, what's wrong? You sound different. I am different, I told him. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? Arthur met me at Rosie's diner the next morning. He took one look at my face and knew something serious had happened. Over coffee and blueberry muffins, I told him everything. The jewelry, Trent's betrayal, Ruth's silence, the $7,000. I watched Arthur's kind face harden with each detail. His jaw clenched. His hands gripped his coffee cup so tight I thought it might shatter. That son of a... He caught himself, remembering we were in public. Hazel, that's theft. You could press charges. Maybe, I said. But first, I need to understand something. I need to know what else Trent has been doing. Because a man who steals from his mother-in-law doesn't suddenly become a thief overnight. There's more, Arthur. I can feel it. Arthur nodded slowly. You want me to look into his finances? Only what's legal, I said firmly. I won't break any laws. But yes, I want to know the truth about what Trent's been doing to my daughter. Arthur reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Henry would be proud of you, he said quietly. It took Arthur 2 weeks to piece together the truth, and what he found made my blood run cold. We sat in his home office surrounded by papers and bank statements, and he walked me through it all. Trent had opened 3 credit cards in Ruth's name without her knowledge. He had taken out a personal loan using their house as collateral, forging Ruth's signature on the documents. He had invested in 2 business ventures that turned out to be pyramid schemes, losing nearly $40,000 of their savings. The jewelry sale wasn't about practicality. It was about desperation. Trent was drowning in debt, hiding it from Ruth, and stealing whatever he could to keep his house of cards from collapsing. "He's a con artist," Arthur said bluntly. "Maybe not a professional one, but he's been lying and stealing from your daughter for at least 2 years. I sat there, feeling sick and furious and heartbroken all at once. Ruth didn't know. My daughter had no idea she was married to a man who was destroying their lives one lie at a time. The worst part was watching Trent play his role in public. 2 Sundays after Arthur's discovery, I attended a family barbecue at Ruth's house. Trent was all smiles and charm, flipping burgers, telling jokes, putting his arm around Ruth and calling her his beautiful wife. When I arrived, he hugged me like nothing had happened. "Mom Hazel," he said warmly. "So glad you could make it. I saved you the best chair on the patio." I smiled back, playing my own role now. The sweet, forgiving mother-in-law who didn't make waves. But inside, I was watching everything. The way he checked his phone constantly, his face tightening when messages came through. The way he steered conversations away from money topics. The way Ruth looked at him with complete trust, believing every word. I ate my burger and made small talk, and I felt the contempt boiling in my chest. This man was a liar, a thief, and a coward. And I was going to take him down. But I had to be patient. I had to be smart. Revenge wasn't about anger. It was about justice. 3 weeks after that barbecue, I did something that shocked everyone in Cedar Grove. I reopened the Marin hardware store. The building had been sitting empty for 8 years, but it was structurally sound. I spent 2 weeks cleaning it out, repainting the walls, organizing inventory I purchased from a clothing shop 2 towns over. People in town thought I was being sentimental, reliving the glory days with Henry. Bless her heart. I heard Mrs. Patterson say at the post office. She's trying to keep his memory alive. Let them think that. The truth was much simpler. I was re-establishing Marin Enterprises as a legitimate, functioning business. I was creating a paper trail, documenting assets, proving my competence and independence. Arthur helped me file all the proper licenses and permits. Everything was above board, everything was legal, and everything was in my name alone. When Trent heard about it, he actually laughed. "That's cute," he told Ruth over dinner, not knowing I was listening from the kitchen. "Grandma's playing shopkeeper. How long before she gets tired and closes again?" While I swept floors and stocked shelves at the hardware store, Arthur was digging deeper into the financial records. One afternoon, he called me with news that changed everything. "Hazel, sit down," he said. "I found something important." He had discovered old trust papers from when Henry and I first established our business. There was a small investment account we had set up in the 80s, putting aside money for retirement. Henry had died before we ever claimed it, and in my grief, I had completely forgotten it existed. The account had been generating small dividends for 5 years, untouched, unclaimed. It wasn't a fortune, but it was over $32,000. Legitimate money. Legal money. Money that was entirely mine. "Arthur," I said slowly, "this means I have resources. Real resources to fight back with." "More than that," Arthur replied. "It means you have proof of financial competency. You're not some confused old woman being taken advantage of. You're a businesswoman with active accounts and a functioning enterprise." I smiled for the first time in weeks. Trent had underestimated me completely. The next family dinner was at my house, something Ruth had suggested to help us all reconnect. I cooked pot roast with potatoes and carrots, Henry's favorite meal. Trent showed up wearing an expensive new watch I knew Ruth hadn't bought him. He made a big show of complimenting my cooking, acting like the perfect gentleman. Halfway through dinner, he brought up my hardware store. "So Mom Hazel, how's your cute little hobby shop doing?" His tone was condescending, like he was talking to a child with a lemonade stand. "Are you making any money, or is it just something to keep you busy?" Ruth shot him a warning look, but I just smiled. "It's doing quite well actually," I said calmly. "I'm even considering expanding the inventory next month." Trent laughed. "Expanding? Mom, you know small businesses like that usually fail in the first year, right? Maybe you should talk to me before making any big financial decisions. I could give you some advice." I met his eyes across the table, my smile never wavering. "That's very kind, Trent. But I have excellent financial advisors already." Over the next month, Arthur and I worked together like detectives in a crime novel. We documented everything we found about Trent's schemes. The credit cards with Ruth's name had maxed out balances totaling $18,000. The forged loan documents showed his signature attempt at Ruth's handwriting, clumsy and obvious once you knew what to look for. The failed investment schemes had email trails proving Trent knew they were risky before he put their money in. We organized it all in a thick binder, color-coded and cross-referenced. Every lie had a paper trail. Every theft left a mark. Arthur found proof that Trent hadn't paid property taxes on their house in 2 years, putting Ruth at risk of losing her home. He found evidence of gambling debts Trent had hidden by creating fake business expense receipts. The picture was clear and damning. This wasn't just a man who made bad choices. This was systematic fraud and financial abuse. "We have enough for criminal charges," Arthur said seriously. "But we also have enough for you to protect Ruth if you want to do this differently." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. I was at the hardware store one Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang. It was Barbara Chen from First National Bank, where Ruth and Trent had their mortgage. "Mrs. Marin," she said hesitantly, "I have an unusual question. Did you recently co-sign a home equity line of credit application for your daughter and son-in-law?" My heart stopped. "No, I absolutely did not." There was a long pause. "That's what I thought. The signature doesn't match the one we have on file from your business accounts. I wanted to verify before we processed it. This could be fraud." Trent had tried to forge my signature to get more money, using my name and credit without permission. It was the first domino, the one that would bring everything crashing down. "Barbara," I said carefully, "please put a hold on that application. I'll be coming in tomorrow with my lawyer to discuss this further." When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, from satisfaction. He had made a fatal mistake, and now I had him. That evening, Ruth showed up at my door unannounced. Her eyes were red from crying, and she clutched a tissue in her hand. "Mom, please," she said before I could even let her in. "Please don't make trouble with the bank." Trent explained everything. It was just a misunderstanding. I stepped aside and let her in, my heart breaking for her. She was so deep in his lies she couldn't see the truth right in front of her. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Henry and I had shared thousands of meals. "Ruth, honey," I said gently, "this isn't a misunderstanding. Trent tried to use my name without permission. That's fraud." "He was trying to help us," she insisted, her voice rising. "We need money, Mom. We have bills, we have expenses. He was just trying to find a solution." "By forging my signature?" I asked quietly. "By stealing from me, Just like he stole my jewelry? Ruth flinched. That's not fair. You're making it sound worse than it is. I reached across the table and took her hand. Baby, I'm not making anything. I'm revealing what's already there. The following Sunday, I hosted dinner at my house again. Ruth and Trent came, though Trent was clearly uncomfortable. He kept checking his watch and making excuses about having to leave early. We ate mostly in silence, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. After dessert, I stood up and walked to the sideboard. I pulled out 2 thick manila envelopes, the kind lawyers use for important documents. I carried them back to the table and placed them carefully in front of Trent. What's this? He asked, his face going pale. One is for your conscience, I said calmly. And one is for your future. You can open them now, or you can open them later. But either way, the truth is coming out. Trent's hands shook as he reached for the envelopes, but he didn't open them. Ruth looked between us, confused and frightened. Mom, what's going on? She asked. I didn't answer. I just sat back down and took a sip of my tea, watching Trent's face drain of all color. Let him wonder. Let him panic. Let him feel what I felt when he stole my history. After that dinner, Trent went into overdrive trying to cover his tracks. Arthur's banking contacts reported seeing a flurry of activity on Trent's accounts. He transferred money between checking and savings, trying to make it look like he had more funds than he actually did. He paid off one credit card using another credit card, a classic sign of someone drowning in debt. He even tried to sell their second car, listing it online for cash. But every move he made, Arthur and I documented. Every transfer was logged. Every desperate attempt to hide his crimes just created more evidence. It was like watching a man dig himself deeper into a hole, thinking he was building a ladder. Ruth called me 3 times that week, begging me to tell her what was in those envelopes. Mom, please. You're scaring me. What did you give Trent? The truth. I told her simply. Just the truth, honey. That's all it's ever been. I wanted to tell her everything, to warn her about the man she married. But she had to see it for herself. She had to wake up on her own. 2 weeks later, Trent received a certified letter from the Internal Revenue Service. Arthur had filed a confidential tip about discrepancies in Trent's tax returns, specifically concerning unreported income and fraudulent business deductions. The IRS doesn't mess around with potential fraud cases. They launched an audit immediately. Trent stormed into my hardware store on a Wednesday morning, his face red with rage. You did this, he shouted, not caring that customers were watching. You called the IRS on me, you vindictive old woman. I was standing behind the counter, organizing receipts. I looked up at him over my reading glasses and smiled calmly. I didn't call anyone, Trent. But truth has a funny way of catching up to people, doesn't it? You're trying to destroy me, he hissed, leaning across the counter. I'll sue you for harassment, for slander, for everything. With what money? I asked mildly. From what I understand, you're quite broke. He left, slamming the door so hard the bell nearly flew off its hook. But I wasn't worried. I had done everything legally, everything by the book. I was just helping the truth find its way into the light. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Ruth showed up at my hardware store, soaking wet, mascara running down her face. He forged my signature, she said, her voice hollow. On the jewelry sale. On the loan documents. On everything. I went to the bank to check our accounts, and they showed me the signatures. That's not my handwriting, Mom. That's not my signature. I came around the counter and pulled her into my arms. She collapsed against me, sobbing like she was 5 years old again. I'm so stupid, she cried. How did I not see it? How did I let him do this to us? You trusted him, I said, stroking her wet hair. You loved him. That's not stupidity, honey. That's having a good heart. She pulled back and looked at me with devastated eyes. I defended him. I let him sell your jewelry, and I defended him. Mom, I'm so sorry. I know, baby, I whispered. I know. That night, Ruth packed a bag and moved back into my house. She didn't say anything to Trent. She just left, taking only her clothes and her laptop. And for the first time in weeks, I felt hope. Word travels fast in a small town like Cedar Grove. By the weekend, everyone knew that Ruth had left Trent and moved back in with me. They also knew about the IRS audit and the fraud investigation. Suddenly, people were treating me differently. At church on Sunday, 3 different people stopped me to say they always knew something was off about Trent. Mrs. Patterson, who had called my hardware store cute 2 months ago, asked if I needed help with inventory management. You're doing such important work, she said earnestly. Keeping this store alive, giving people jobs. We need more businesswomen like you in this town. I had hired 2 part-time employees, both young people who needed flexible work. Apparently, this made me a community hero now. Meanwhile, Trent's reputation was crumbling. People who had done business with him were reviewing their contracts, finding inconsistencies and inflated charges. His boss at the dealership where he worked started asking questions about his expense reports. The man who had stolen my jewelry and called me senile was now known throughout Cedar Grove as the thief who betrayed his own family. 3 weeks after Ruth moved home, I received an unexpected phone call from Marcus Brennan, the jeweler Trent had sold my pieces to. Mrs. Marin, he said, his voice nervous. I need to speak with you about some items I purchased. There's been a flag raised internally. A flag? I asked, my heart racing. Yes, ma'am. You see, when I buy estate jewelry, I'm required to log descriptions and document provenance. Well, I happened to mention the Marin name to my appraiser, and she remembered your husband. She said he showed her some of these same pieces years ago for insurance purposes. She said they were family heirlooms, not items that should be sold without proper documentation of ownership transfer. My hand gripped the phone tighter. What does that mean? It means, Marcus said carefully, that these pieces have been flagged as potentially disputed property. There's an automatic legal hold on them now until the matter is resolved. I can't sell them, and if there's proof they were taken without proper authorization, they'll be returned to their rightful owner. I thought you should know. I had to sit down. I hadn't accused anyone. I hadn't filed charges. But the system itself had caught Trent's crime. The court case wasn't dramatic like on television. It was held in a small courtroom with wood paneling and uncomfortable chairs. Ruth sat beside me, holding my hand. Trent sat across the aisle with a public defender, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. The evidence was overwhelming. Arthur had prepared everything perfectly. The forged signatures, the credit card fraud, the attempted identity theft with my name at the bank, the jewelry theft, confirmed by Marcus Brennan's testimony about disputed provenance, the IRS findings about unreported income and fraudulent deductions. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Walsh, reviewed everything carefully. She asked Trent direct questions about his actions. He tried to explain, to justify, to minimize what he'd done. But every answer just made it worse. Mr. Hayes, Judge Walsh said finally, you systematically defrauded your wife, forged legal documents, attempted identity theft, and stole family heirlooms. These are not mistakes. These are deliberate crimes. She paused, letting her words sink in. I'm ruling in favor of Mrs. Hazel Marin on all counts. The judge's ruling was comprehensive and devastating for Trent. The jewelry sale was deemed fraudulent. Marcus Brennan was ordered to return all pieces to me, and Trent was ordered to reimburse Marcus the full $7,000 he had paid. The forged loan documents were invalidated, protecting Ruth from debt she never authorized. Trent was ordered to pay restitution for the credit card fraud and to attend mandatory financial counseling. His wages would be garnished until every penny was repaid. Additionally, the judge issued a restraining order preventing Trent from contacting me or attempting any financial transactions in my name. As we left the courthouse, I saw Trent standing on the steps, staring at nothing. His lawyer was explaining something, but Trent wasn't listening. He had lost everything. His marriage was over. His reputation was destroyed. His job was hanging by a thread because of the fraud investigation. And it had all happened because he thought an old woman wouldn't fight back. He thought I was too weak, too trusting, too broken by grief to defend myself. He was wrong. 6 months later, I hosted a grand reopening celebration for Marin Hardware Store. The place was packed with people from all over Cedar Grove. I had expanded the inventory and hired 4 full-time employees. The store was thriving, becoming a real community hub again like it was in Henry's time. Ruth worked the register, her smile genuine for the first time in months. She had filed for divorce from Trent, and though it hurt her, she was healing. She was taking accounting classes at the community college, determined to never be financially vulnerable again. Arthur gave a toast, raising his glass of lemonade. To Hazel Marin, he announced loudly. A woman who proves that dignity, determination, and truth will always win in the end. Everyone cheered and clapped. I felt my eyes getting wet, but I was smiling. Through the front window, I saw Trent's car being towed away from the bank parking lot across the street. The bank had seized it as part of his debt repayment. He stood there watching, helpless. It was perfect, poetic symmetry. The man who stole from me was now losing everything he owned. That evening, after everyone had gone home and the store was quiet, I sat behind the old wooden counter Henry had built 40 years ago. The soft tick of the wall clock was the only sound. On the counter in front of me was a new glass display case. Inside it, gleaming under the warm lights, were my mother's wedding ring, my grandmother's pearl necklace, and Henry's anniversary bracelet. Above the case, I had mounted a small brass plaque. Family History, the Marin Legacy. I touched the glass gently, feeling the weight of generations of strong women who had come before me. My mother, who worked 2 jobs to keep us fed. My grandmother, who survived the Depression without selling her dignity. And Henry, who loved me with his whole heart for 43 years. I didn't need revenge, I realized. I never did. What I needed was to remind everyone, including myself, who I was. I was Hazel Marin. I was a businesswoman, a mother, a survivor. And nobody, not even a thief who slept under my daughter's roof, could take that away from me. I smiled, locked the door, and went home. Justice had been served, and I could finally rest.